Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast, The Secret War on Cash, where we take a hard look at what is going on in this secret war on your cash, on my cash, on all of our cash. The war seems to be heating up quite a bit, and I have with me my co-host, Chris Agelastos. We're going to actually talk about the secret war on cash as it relates to really how it's hitting home to a lot of households and a lot of families out there. Good morning to you, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing okay, but there's a war on my wallet, I think, as this article is gonna touch on.
There has been a war, but it's a war that has consistently been heating up, and this is not good news that we're about to talk about here. However, as I read through this, I saw the headline, and as I started reading through it, there are some silver linings to this. So we'll dive right into it. It's no secret. Any of us who eat food, buy gas, pay electric bills, buy clothing, do any of the stuff, buy electronics, things are not really getting much of any cheaper. They're getting more expensive. Now, before anybody comments and says that, yes, there are some things that have gotten cheaper, that is true. However, there is also more truth to the fact that households are struggling right now. We've been talking about this in our podcast for several months, where if you're talking about people having to go back to work in order to buy groceries and pay bills, or people have had to tap into their retirement accounts to pay bills and buy groceries, there's really just been a strain financially for people, families, households, to take care of the minimums, if you will. And as the headline says here, parents say that sky-high grocery bills are leading to, quote, drastic readjustments at home. And you start looking, as you read through this, and it gives a few examples of, what it is actually costing these households to pay bills. It really, it's sad. But one of the things that I liked about this is it also gets into, and I'm not going to steal any thunder because I want you to kind of get into this for us, Chris, but it has caused people to, I guess you could say to some extent, kind of unite a little bit. So share a little bit about this, Chris. I mean, tell us what's going on here.
Yeah. So what they talk about here actually is parents and, people using social media to kind of highlight what's going on, right? They're sharing their grocery receipts, discussing the high costs out there and also how they are overcoming it. So that's sort of the positive spin on it a little bit here, is that it's forcing people to look at the situation, share possible fixes, and uniting people in that way. People are sharing recipes and things they do to trim off their grocery budget and feed their families. So there is a lot of community going on there, but that helps, which is great. But at the end of the day, they're still seeing massive increases in costs. I mean, it wasn't that long ago I could go to the grocery store and pretty much $100 to $125 got us a huge cart, and it's still a lot of money, not cheap by any means. But you go there now and grab ingredients to make a couple of meals, and you're barely covering the bottom of your shopping cart, and it's very easily $100 just for that these days. So it's certainly expensive. We're seeing it everywhere.
Well, I think to the point in the article, and like you touched on, what is kind of encouraging to see about this, and especially just recently having this failed assassination attempt on former President Trump, where I would agree with what a lot of people have said. It is symbolic of the fact, or representative of the fact, that we don't need division in this country right now. We need unity, no matter what that looks like, no matter where you sit politically, or what side of the fence that is. And that's really encouraging thing. And as we're dealing with that issue that we just went through here recently with the assassination attempt, it's nice to hear and see that the human spirit in the United States of America is very strong and always has been strong. And now you have these parents who, and the subtitle or subheading on this article, point blank says, to combat this inflation, they're sharing coupons, they're prepping meals, starting home gardens. And so what is nice, it's a negative topic, but it is and has created a sense of unity and a sense of community. And that's something that we really need right now. And so we talk about sky high prices. The next article I wanted to just kind of highlight, if you will, is giving an inflation breakdown for June of 2024. Mm-hmm. And they put it in one chart. At the end of the day, there's a lot of talk about how inflation is getting more in check and what have you. However, there's two sides to that discussion, because there are certain things that we touched on at the opening of this podcast. There are things that have come a little bit better in check, but there are also things that really count that aren't so much in check. Yeah. And the bottom line is, it's easy, especially when you talk about year over year, June 2024 versus June 2023. And or even if we start looking at the last 6 months, the last 12 months, even the last couple of years. And this discussion has always been there and will always be there about, where is inflation? The bottom line, however, Chris, is that, when you look at, we don't live our life in 2 years, God willing. Our lifespan is decades. And I think that the bigger issue is the fact that when you look at decade over decade over decade, what the amount of prices the amount that pricing has gone up, it's not keeping pace with wages and what they're doing right now. And in fact, we're kind of setting new records, new short-term records for unemployment. So it tells a story, but the bottom line is, do you see inflation? Number one, that the Fed is going to get it in check. And number two, that life as we know it in terms of what it cost us, is it going to become more affordable in the foreseeable future?
I don't think so. I mean, the thing about inflation, and when they talk about these numbers that, when inflation is down from 3.2% to 3%, CPI, that sounds, okay, we're making a downward movement, but it still means that prices rose by 3%. Their target is 2%. So we're quite a bit, 50% higher than their target. So prices are, I'm just sort of the opinion that prices are always going to increase. Like you said, there may be some drops. I recently took a little road trip to Southern California here from Arizona. And, the gas prices were a little bit lower than what we saw, earlier in the year and the previous summer. However, the auto insurance on my car that I drove is up about 20%. And wow. The guilty pleasure of the McDonald's drive-through in the middle of the desert on a road trip cost me $45 for, 3 value meals. So great, I saved a little bit on my gas, but it's like they're getting it somewhere else. That's why I said, my wallet is currently being attacked. I mean, things are going to continue to cost us more. And what is unfortunate about that, especially with the slowing wage growth, is that people just can't afford it. They have to figure out where do I cut from? Our previous article even mentioned that 25% of the people they surveyed admitted to occasionally skipping some meals because food costs are so high. 80% of the people they surveyed are feeling the higher prices. So now the one benefit that they touch on here a little bit is that consumer demand is starting to slow, right? People are feeling the pinch. They're having to choose between, item A and item B. I can't pay for both. And so hopefully that lower demand will prevent businesses from continuing to be able to, raise prices. They're going to have to be a little bit more competitive. But like they also say in here, it moves very slowly, these changes. So I don't think any of us are going to really see any relief in our checking accounts anytime soon. Maybe long term, we can kind of slow the leak, I guess, plug some of the holes in the boat. But I think from here on out, we're constantly going to be keeping an eye on the water level and having to use a bucket to bail water when necessary.
Sure. Well, and a couple things about that, like you talk about how demand has kind of lightened up a little bit. That in and of itself, I don't believe is going to automatically mean prices will soften up.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they do, it probably speaks to the greater problem, or the domino effect, which is people losing jobs. Because if the demand lightens up, then employers are not going to be keeping as much staff, and that could in part be one of the reasons we're seeing this spike, in our unemployment figures that like we are right now. And the other thing, going back to way back when I was in college studying, finance and economics, then going through working in investment banking, and then metals for all these years. The inflationary figures have always, every time I hear them, every time you read something about it, it still always leaves you with a question mark, because they openly admit when they measure inflation, if an item goes up too much in value, they take it out because they feel that it skews, the average. But if let's just say that whatever that item is, everybody in the country was buying it, then it's not a skewed number. I mean, that's a real number. And I bring this up only, and we don't have to belabor this. We can wrap up here, but when you look at for instance, the food cost, and that when they're saying like this is how much this went up, one of the things that we have all seen, we've all experienced in the last few years that has changed dramatically in food is the packaging. Where the most blatant, I think we've talked about this in a podcast months ago, but like potato chips are like one of the best examples. I'll never forget when you first picked up that chip, where it was the same bag, same price, but like you could, as soon as you picked it up, you're like, I think half the chips fell out of this thing. And so like when they're saying the food cost only went up X amount, or they haven't changed it hasn't changed that much, how does that factor in? And I just don't believe it does. And I don't think that, I've never seen anything, I've never read anything that says, oh, if a product, is going to make our average look better than it should, we're going to get rid of that. It's only if it's going to make it look worse than what it really is. So anyway, we'll keep watching it. I don't think the topic of inflation is going away. For those of you tuning in, if you are not subscribed to this podcast, please do so. We'd love to keep in touch and continue to bring you more information like this. And if you have any interest in learning more about this secret war on cash, or if you'd like to learn more about how to get yourself protected against a secret war by way of gold and silver, feel free to contact our office at 1-800-289-2646, or you can visit us online at www.swissamerica.com. And if you're not following us on social media, you can do that as well. Chris, thank you again. Look forward to talking with you more again. And for those of you tuning in, have a great rest of your day.